Welcome to the Red Text.
A crossroads of the holy and heretical.
Join us now for another episode in Unholy Communion.
Welcome back to the Red Text Podcast. My name is Fonzie. I am Witch Illumiscente on Instagram and Twitter.
My name is Ryan. You can find me on Instagram at the Mestizo Mystic or my silly little thoughts on Twitter at Mestizo Mystic.
You know, your silly little thoughts always, I mean, you call them silly little thoughts, but there are these silly little thoughts that really get me through my day. So it's interesting that you say that because your silly little thoughts make me happy. Like the one that you posted today about you booking a flight to go see someone that you really oh my god, no, because she's blushing. Please don't blush. I'm so excited for you. I just saw that today. So
Thank you.
Anyways, how you doing, babes?
I'm good. You know, a lot of good news recently. Like, I thought I was gonna have to pay $500 out of pocket for some medical expenses, which I found out are now going to be covered by my company that I work for. And then,
love it.
Really great news. I applied for grad school. I haven't been officially accepted yet, but I passed the first round of application reviews. So now it's being passed on to faculty to be reviewed. So I should find out in the next couple of weeks if I got accepted. So I'm just anticipating that.
Oh my god, congratulations. Oh my god. I always give everyone the claps because going back to school sounds like a fucking nightmare. I am never going back to school.
Yo, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to be working full time and doing school full time, but your bitch wants to be a therapist.
You want to be a therapist?
I do. I'm going back for psychology.
Oh my god. Well, there goes the podcast.
No, we will find a way. I just won't sleep again. Who needs sleep?
No, I'm just saying.
But the need for sleep.
By the time you become a therapist, it's just who you're going to be just changing the world and just helping people left and right. Who needs a podcast?
I'm just hoping. Hey, you know what? This podcast is changing the world. So you know what? This is it's like a mini step in the right direction.
I guess that's true. I think you're right. Now it's your turn. Yeah, it's your turn to ask me. I'm doing really well actually. I'm just kind of I posted this thing on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, about being part of this community has kind of reinvigorated my urge to create things and do things, which I haven't felt in a really long time. And I had recently been part of an event where I was reading tarot, and there were a whole bunch of vendors there. So it started kind of turning the cogs in my brain about what I could possibly do business-wise when it comes to my magic. So there are some things that I'm currently working on. So yes. So I'm brainstorming right now. So I'm getting kind of excited about doing that and just trying to be as creative as possible, because when you work full time and you're also, your side hustle is like a podcast, you don't have a lot of time during the day to do things. So
right.
I'm trying to find time to be creative. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had no idea how much time this was going to take up. I mean, I enjoy every second of it, but it's
I love this job.
Work full time, do a podcast, and then free time. I'm like, am I going to sleep? Am I going to watch
I know.
TV?
What is sleep? Sleep is stupid. Sleep is overrated. But Ryan, we have a special guest with us today. How special is this guest? Can you please tell us how special this guest is?
Oh my god, so special. I'm so excited to have them here with us today.
Okay, this really warms my heart that they were able to be so generous with their time and spend this time with us. We actually have Mana, who is a friend and also a fellow podcaster, here with us. Mana, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and telling us what you're all about, and telling us all the good stuff, your podcast, your Instagrams, your pronouns, and all that stuff, and so our audience knows who the hell you are.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I was honored to be asked to join you over here. This is my first, I think, video podcast that the video is getting recorded also. So if I seem nervous, that is why. My pronouns are they, she. You can find me on Instagram at Mothmana Tarot. My website's mothmana.com. That was like a Discord username that has become, I guess, my name around now. I am a witch. I am a tarot reader. And I host the Real Witches of the End Times podcast, which is what I think most people, if they recognize me, would know me from. I try to interview people who, and I used to say this is a joke, and now I know it's true. It's like factually true, but I like to interview people who I think if I shove them all in a room together would actually probably fight at some point. And I know that's true. I never wanted it to come to fruition, but that was like the joke. I like talking to people. I think you can find common ground in different practices and different things and learn things even if you don't agree. Obviously there's, some aspects of a line, but for the most part, I like to learn, and I have discovered throughout the past almost 2 years, almost my podiversary, my second podiversary, that having a podcast is a great way to get in contact with people that would be hard to get in contact with otherwise. It's a line of credibility, and you just get them like an hour of nonstop I talk to you, and it's awesome. And that's an extra pro that I've learned.
It's true. It really is a privilege, isn't it, for us to have this platform? It's amazing.
Absolutely.
And we were actually guests on that wonderful podcast. And I was telling Ryan after it was published that I was like, Ryan, this is like one of the first episodes where I actually listened to my voice more than once, because I never listen to our episodes more than once usually. But I was so like into that episode for some reason. Maybe it's like just an air of narcissism, but like I loved us on that episode. We were all so funny.
We were fun. I had a great time recording it, and I think, when you get a couple of people who are just genuinely talking about things that they care about and are passionate about, and just have the space to, free flow about it, you get something really cool, which is what I think we were able to do. And we got a lot of amazing feedback from it, a lot of feedback in general, but for the most part, like overwhelmingly people that, I see the usernames roll in on different platforms that I recognize, or messages that I get, but there were people that have never like quite said anything before, but who were directly messaging me saying like how important that episode was for them and their own healing quest or journey with religious trauma and things like that. So I think we did something cool.
Absolutely. I'm constantly blown away by like the impacts that people say that just talking about folk Catholicism, folk Christianity has, and whether it's us guesting on your podcast or just talking about it in general, it's such a beautiful experience. So thank you again for having us, because that just helped extend this outreach and provide that platform to bring those people back to this beautiful mystical faith.
Yeah, I'm so happy you guys were able to be there.
Oh my gosh, we were happy to be there. Are you kidding? That was so much fun. All right, well, Mana, do you mind, because you did mention that you are a witch, so do you mind, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, what does your practice look like? Where does it come from? What is what's the juicy stuff, the nice stuff, the magical stuff?
So I've been thinking about how to answer this question because I knew you'd ask it. So I was trying to kind of pinpoint, and I've done this on other podcasts in the past, and I think my answers would probably be a little bit inconsistent on a time frame, and that's not like to be weird or hide anything. It's just I think the more I genuinely look back at my past and how I got to this point, I don't really know when it started. I think it's just kind of been a development over the course of my life to this point. I will say putting it in a specific lens and being a part of a community specifically has been like being a part of a community, talking to people has literally been from when I started the podcast more so. So that I would say has had like a rapid build of knowledge in the past 2 years that has actually led me back to the point of, I say just, but it's a big thing, but I just go with witch now. And for a while, that's where I started. And then I felt like, because what I was reading, for years and years, it was like, well, I have to like specialize in a specific thing, or am I this type of witch, that type of witch? And it ultimately was really unhelpful for me to try to categorize myself in a specific way,
right,
other than for communicative purposes. So now I just go with witch because, and I think I saw Britt and Boyd say, I'm just a witch, plain and simple. And I really resonated with that when I saw them post that at one point. So for the most part, to me, that encompasses an emphasis on like what's available to you. But I will also say like not everyone has to be a witch to be magical and to practice magic in any way. And so I mean it there's something like inside of myself that cannot stray from that path. And in Apocalyptic Witchcraft, Peter Gray talks about how like the witch cannot be disarmed. The witch, like specifically, like it's almost like violent to the self to deny in a way. And that's something that I really think about when it comes to my path and like who I am, because when I take away all of this tech stuff, right, like all of the podcast or the communicating with people online or sharing practices specifically, like who am I on my own? And for me, that's witch, plain and simple. For my cultural background though, I am Thai and a whole array of different European origins as well. Some of my family is from Ireland, England, and Basque and everything like that. And then one time I took a DNA test and that confused me even more. So I'm many things. I'm a liminal person. I'm a queer person. I think that goes hand in hand with being a witch too, is towing that line between different worlds. And we were going to talk about animism today, and that to me is an inherent part of witchcraft, because you're working with spirits, and the spirits aren't just people around or ghosts specifically. There's the spirit of the candle that's in front of me, or my microphone, or the mouse in my ceiling that none of you all of that. So but my practice though, at the point it's at now, has kind of come back to, or is coming back to what, like I'm trying to simplify it a lot more. I got really caught up for a while in like the trying to learn as many things as possible because I was talking to so many different people. But for me, my practice is extremely spirit-based. I, for the most part, it's really easy for me to kind of like go off to another world in my head. A lot of my strongest allies are not deities. They're not saints specifically for me. They're like kind of just personal spirits, like people I would encounter in the wild, but they are just invisible and have access to different things that I don't normally, and we help each other in that sense. And also plants. I went to herb school, which sounds kind of weird. You can't like get a credential in that. I just say that in as I spent a pretty heavy year studying herbalism in 2020, and that herbs have been a strong part of my life since 2017 when I had a lot of medical stuff that kind of put me on that path. And so plant allyship and plant spirits and all of that are all really heavy parts of my practice as well. So again, long-winded. I don't know if I fully answered what you're trying to get to.
fully answered it. I love that answer, because I mean, that's if someone were to ask me like how I practice, if I took out like the folk Christian part of if I took the religious aspect out of my practice, I'm like excuse me, I would have been like, I believe my house is a spirit. Does that make sense to you? And they'd be like, no. And we're like, well, that's what I do. In a general sense of the word, you know what I mean? Like everything is that's kind of like the foundation of my practice, is like everything has a thing attached to it that needs to be respected and revered,
Yeah, I agree with you, Fonzie. Yeah, like same thing. If I stripped away the whole folk Christian thing, it's just like there's just life in everything. And at least for me, my path in witchcraft is just working with that life that's in everything. And I feel like you find so much more power and magic in life when you're able to recognize the life that dwells within everything. And I feel like when we look at a lot of different cultures, especially pre-colonial, like a lot of them were animist in belief and saw the magic and life in every little thing, in every rock, and every leaf. And so, yeah, I agree.
All right. Yeah, I totally, we all line up to, look, we all just agree. We're all just having a good time together. We're all just friends. So, I mean, we're going into this topic of animism. I think it's important for folks to understand what animism actually is. So I believe that maybe we all have similar kind of ideas of what we believe animism is, but Mana, do you want to expand on how you view animism and how it kind of plugs into your practice?
Yeah, I don't know if this is just my personal definition when I think about it. Obviously, there'll be anecdotes from other folks and things I'll forget to say, but I feel to me that, like I said before, everything has an essence, has a spirit. to some extent like has a consciousness. And so it's difficult when I look at, or when I, 2 years ago came onto the online community and saw how much everything was about using something else, like using this specific plant, using this for that, basically just to get whatever material gain or need that you wanted at the time. And I do think there's a time and place for when you need material things and when you want things or something to enrich your life. And I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with pursuing that. But when we abandon the relationship that we have with things other than like flesh and blood creatures or humans specifically, because we often even treat animals with so much disrespect, we're ignoring and losing connection with one, like the earth and the way we treat the planet, which is really evident with the environmental state of Earth at this time. And it damages our relationship like with ourselves too, because if we see ourselves as separate from nature, it's always like I have to go out and be in nature, as opposed to seeing your environment as nature and seeing your connection and how things are, really only separate in name and form. Without animism, which is a weird thing to say, like that's a really weird sentence, like, cause I don't think you can even, like, even people who say like I don't believe in animism, I'm just like, that's awesome, the spirits in your house would disagree with you, but that's okay.
Right.
They're still there.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, I just don't see how without animism, how we could interact with the world in a way that's like not violent, like to not consider other things other than ourselves. Like it's just an inherently destructive way to interact with, an unbalanced way to interact with everything around us. And even like internally too, like I even think of like our gut biomes, right? Like our digestive system and the bacteria in there. And we often will think of, we have to eliminate bacteria as bad always. In reality, that's not true. And there's such a mind-body connection with our own physical self too, that we often don't think about. Or I'm looking at all the archways. I have a lot of archways in my home, and I think when we look at gateways or doors or portals or things, there's always spirits that kind of dwell in that space that you can build a relationship with. When I first really put a name to that feeling, because for me this has kind of been a part of my life. I grew up in the woods when I was a kid. I was an only child for 10 years until my siblings were born, like huge age gap for us. And while like the internet was a thing when I was a kid, I didn't have a ton of access to that at all until I was like 18, until like it wasn't really a part of, even possible to get where I lived. Even like the kids that lived like in town, like they would do stuff or they would have access to things, and I would go home and we would still be the people with dial-up, like way after dial-up should have been done.
Whoa, so dial-up. Yikes.
Dial-up. I hate that sound. It's like
it's awful.
Yeah, but like because of that, so I am in a way grateful that I spent so much time alone, because that's, to me, it was second nature to talk to like other beings and things. Like I was always outside. I had an imaginary friend until I was in junior high, which is weird for apparently if you talk about your imaginary friends when you're like 13. But I was like, nah, like Kate was here, and all these people that I would hang out with in the backyard. And I made our house into like an international spy academy, and then all of these invisible people that lived on our property like would play with me and go to this spy school. It's weirder and weirder the more I think about it, but
no, but that's so cool.
That's so cool.
I wish I was your friend then. That sounds like so much fun.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like second nature to me. And when I got older and started, finding books about Wicca and all that stuff, and reading more and more of trying to put a structure around it, it was helpful for like basic skills and learning how to do like how does a candle spell work, yada yada yada. But eventually I got so detracted from that into kind of the witch consumer culture that I started to lose. It hurt me. I was like, this doesn't work for me, this doesn't fit for me. And then it's been like in the past year pretty much that I've been like, no, like I value all this knowledge and I love learning all these things, but I need to stop like trying to make everything fit into my practice, because I trust these people, and they have all this experience, but it's what works for them, and it's what works for their community. And I have a strength for inner world exploration, for astral travel, for spirit connection, for constantly like divining from my physical environment, which is, I think, is connected to animism too, to like receive messages from your direct space, even if it's not a deck of cards or bones. That I need to focus like on my relationships with spirits. Like, even I've noticed, the more I focused on that and having an animistic approach to things, the less personally I've needed to have like a lot of physical manifestations and workings. If I can communicate a respect or a need to someone that I know in my court or as an ally, and then leave offerings or think of them and include them in other things that I'm doing in a kind way, oftentimes what I'm looking for will find its way to me without having to do a specific working at all. So that's my relationship with animism and what I think of it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, well, it's definitely my view on animism and how I perceived it has definitely shifted, especially since coming back to embracing Catholicism in a folk sense. So like I never really understood like the Holy Spirit, right? But then as I read more about Catholic theology, it's like that's the spirit of God that pervades everything. So that's kind of the life that I see that lives in everything, whether it's rock, leaf, plant, a chair, piece of wood, whatever, is that's the Holy Spirit. That's the life essence that comes from the creator, spirit, God, whatever you want to say. And so it's really beautiful because like Mana, like you were saying, like it's not like you have to go out in nature to experience nature. We can just experience that in our immediate environment. Like how often do we just sit in a room and look at let's say our desk is made of wood, right? Like just looking at that and thinking of where that wood came from. That wood was a tree once. Like it still holds that life, but like it lived a whole life before it became that desk that we're sitting at, right? And so when I view it in the sense of a full Catholic, just like the Holy Spirit is just all around us, whether it's the smallest thing or biggest thing, an item we never even like walk by or perceive that much. It's just, it brings so much more beauty to life when we take the moment to sit and recognize like, oh, everything around me is alive. It's not just other humans and animals. Like every single thing has this life essence that gives us our human value and spiritual value. Everything has that. So I don't know if that really made sense in describing how I perceive animism, but yeah, like the Holy Spirit is kind of how I perceive life in everything. And like there's nothing really dead. Like everything is alive in one way excuse me, one way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. Well, it made sense. I mean, just to answer your question, yes, it does. It might not make sense to some people who have not really kind of been, who have not really made that shift in their brain. Because the way I see animism, I like to kind of equate it to, have you guys ever read The Giving Tree?
Mm-hmm.
No.
By Shel Silverstein? It's iconic. It's that green book with a tree and it's like a little boy reaching for an apple.
I know the cover. I just don't think I ever read it as a kid.
Okay, so for Ryan and anyone else who hasn't read the book growing up as a child, it was one of my favorite
for
books.
Ryan.
This just kind of goes also into the idea of animism has always been around us, especially, just me personally. I the idea of things having life and having some sort of consciousness has always been around me, especially within this book, because the story is there's this little boy who visits this tree, and it's an apple tree, and the boy asks for an apple. The tree gives it the apple, eats it, and then the boy leaves. And every single time the boy comes back to the tree, the boy is older, asks for something else, like a piece of itself, like a branch or a piece of wood to build something, and eventually it gets to the point where the tree becomes a stump. It's basically given everything that it could give to the boy to make the boy's life better or enrich the boy's life. And for years and years and years, the boy never visited the tree because the tree had nothing else to give the boy. So eventually the tree, or the stump, was there left alone, and many years passed by, and The boy comes back as an old man, and it's tough for him to walk. And at that point, the boy just needed a place to sit. And so the tree said, "Sit on me," as a stump. So, I mean, the moral of the story, I mean, there's a lot of meaning to the story itself. I mean, we can talk about it being about, deforestation, or, you can go on, or you go run with it if you want. But like, there's a lot of things about like how there are things in this world that kind of give and give and give and give. And we kind of forget to show reverence for what it's giving us, for thanking it for just existing. And we don't realize that regardless of everything that it could possibly give us, at the end of the day, even when there isn't anything else to give, it's still willing to give. So you want to think of the tree as having some sort of spirit that just wants to kind of be there for you, just work with it, have respect for it. Something that we've always never really could, like, have you ever gone outside and thanked the cobblestones on the ground for being there so that your feet aren't in the mud? Have you ever thanked your house for you not being without a house? It's all these things. Have you ever thanked the spirit that is within your bed because you have a place to lay your head at night? It's all of these things kind of encompassing all of, everything that makes your life just a little bit better, a little bit easier. They all help you in doing those things. And that's how I practice, how everything is worthy of gratitude. Everything around you is worthy of gratitude. And because everything is worthy of gratitude, when I give gratitude to those things, they give back to me. It's a cycle. So that everything around me isn't reduced to some sort of stump that all I can get out of it is a place to sit,
Totally. I mean, that reminds me of what you said earlier, Mana, about how when we see ourselves as individual from everything else, that usually just tends to cause greed and destruction. So it's like, by recognizing the life in everything, we are more likely, at least I'd like to think, to treat it with more gratitude and respect.
Mm-hmm. I really like what you said, Fonzie, about everything being worthy of gratitude too, because that's similar, while not being the same phrasing, is kind of how I've shifted to the types of like items that I've accumulated in my physical environment too. I have moved a lot in the past and recently too, and so the things that I do have, there's a lot of stuff that's like missing. I don't know what state it's in, but there's certain things that I just prefer to have around because of the relationship I have with it. Even if it's like a specific mug in my cabinet that we share relationship and memories with, I think that's also part of that. Like, I'm really grateful for that mug. But also, like, when I find myself in a really anxious state, one of like the exercises people will talk about you can do, is try to count things in your environment. But you can absolutely, like, I try to do that to recognize, like, things I didn't notice were there that I use every day, like the gate out front of my house that blocks people from coming in off the street. Like, there are absolutely spirits connected to this gate, or within this gate as well, and thanking all of those things and the roles that they have in our lives, whether or not we pay attention to them.
Absolutely. I mean, I implore everyone to try to pay attention to everything that is around you that makes, like what you expanded on, is everything that makes your life so much easier. Don't take any of those things for granted, because there are forces that are working with you to make sure that your life is as easy as it is. Even if you're not, there are folks who are not in the in the greatest situations or whatever. I know that it's kind of difficult to kind of look around and see, what the hell do I have? What do I have to be grateful for? If you look hard enough, there's something working with you that is, keeping you, at the very least, like, safe, and alive, so just pay attention. So going into that, what are some allies that y'all work with specifically that you feel a really, really strong connection with, that you feel comfortable expanding on? Any one of you? Brian, you can go first.
Okay, sure. For me, it's like my jewelry, like my rosaries and my jewelry, whether it's enchanted or not, just because you know, it's on me constantly. So it's just like, it's like a friend, because, you know, then when I want to work with that object or the spirit of that object to obtain, you know, a certain desire, be it protection or attract money or whatever, it's like it's constantly on me. So it knows me, but do I know it? So forming relationships with the spirits of my jewelry, enchanting it and just being like, hey, like, you know, everyone, I get so many compliments on my jewelry. I feel like that's an offering to the spirits of my stuff in general, or in that's an offering to the spirits of my jewelry in and of itself. Is just like, oh, your jewelry looks so pretty. I'm like, thank you, it's right here. And then just my rosaries too, like I carry at least 3 rosaries on me at all times, one in my pocket, one that I wear, and then usually one in like an extra pocket, just in case, because you never know.
She stays strapped. She is so strapped.
Yeah, just and like I'll fiddle with them, and like they're very grounding too, so like I acknowledge that aspect of them too. Like as someone with like ADHD, like sometimes I always find myself just fiddling with stuff, and like if I have a rose in my pocket, I'm just playing with that. It could be a really grounding thing. So I'm just acknowledging, again, the material of where it came from too, whether it's made of wood, of minerals, of just cord. But to answer your question, just I feel like my jewelry, the spirits of my jewelry and my rosaries especially, are what I hold probably closest to me, I would say.
Also, being queer, I think you're just like inherently just like just jewelry is everything.
Oh yeah,
you know? It's so gay to like want jewelry. It's like, you know, so I understand why that, because I've always loved jewelry, so it's just like shiny things.
I was a late bloomer with jewelry. I didn't get into it until 2018. Like that's when I started getting, I always liked wearing like a pendant. That was like, I guess, the one thing I'd always wear as a kid, but it wasn't until like 2018 that I started wearing rings, and then now I'm like covered in rings and several pendants at once, and it's just expensive addiction, but I like to think of them as little allies and not just material things, because I'm a material girl.
A material girl.
Have either of you seen the Material Girl? It's a like a real sound, but it's like the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song in the background. So it's like all of like the jank ass shit some of us do. It's like Material Girl. It's like me. I have for my bathtub, the spirit of my bathtub, with this piece of cardboard I have taped together, and that's my bath tray. So that's my Material Girl moment.
I love it.
Love that.
Awesome. That's amazing. See, here's the thing. I would love to work with the spirit of my bathtub, but I am humongous, and the bathtub that I have was made for someone who was like 5'6", and I am not 5'6". Oh. I'm also not like 180 pounds, so that's probably weird. You're not 180 pounds. You're definitely less than that, right?
I'm 130.
You bitch. All right, that's probably like it's probably like my left leg.
Fonzie, how tall are you?
I'm 6 feet.
You're 6 foot? I'm only 1 inch below you. So
shut
Oh,
up.
everyone's taller than me, I guess. Okay, that's fine.
I can't wait. I literally can't wait until we have like a witch conference. And it's just like all because our friend Francisco, who I work with here, they're 6'2", I think, almost 6'2".
Wow.
How tall is Austin?
Austin's like about my height, slightly taller, like 5. I want to say like 5'8", 5'9".
Oh my gosh. Oh
yeah.
Ryan's just gonna be surrounded by just skyscrapers.
I'm tiny.
Oh my gosh, you're 5'11"?
Yeah, I'm sure you would be way taller than me though, because I've seen your shoe collection.
Oh yeah.
I literally wear barefoot shoes or like really low boots, so I'm exactly my height.
Okay.
With shoes, so you'd be
yeah,
taller
like
than me.
minimum is like my docs, so that's like a half an inch already. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm pretty tall.
So we were talking
okay,
about.
What were we talking about?
We're talking about spirits that we work with.
Yeah.
Ryan brought up some interesting. I liked your note about jewelry. It actually made me think of. I have like a personal talisman that I carry with me everywhere. I own a lot of knives, but there's one that I have that's, it's not. It wouldn't be as functional like for anything other than opening mail, really. But it is one that I've used in ritual multiple times, and it has like a very protective intent and connotation with it, and I take that thing with me everywhere. Like I'm always have it. That knife and I have been through a lot together. It was a gift initially. It's been with me throughout like different countries I've lived in. I think what's one thing too that with animism is like there's some type of like personal bond that it's not necessarily always transferable between a spirit and another person, right? Like I couldn't really give this knife to someone else and for them to have the same relationship. I think the knife would respect like what I would ask in our relationship to like help me protect someone else, but I don't think that person would develop the same relationship with my knife that I have with it, for that specific reason. And I also have personally like a really like flower essences. I don't know if either of you have ever worked with those. It's working with the energetic spirit of a plant. They're really popular with poisonous plants because you don't have to consume any plant material and you're not literally poisoning yourself. But that's one thing that like I put in my water all the time of different plants and herbs that have come to me spiritually. And there's several plant allies that I have that I've never gardened. I've rarely like even had like in my hands. Like they've shown up, and I'm a very stubborn person, and so usually if spirits or of any variety, whether they're fairy or if they're like ancestral or if they're plants, like they usually have to kind of hit me over the head a few times before I take them seriously, because I'm also very paranoid and I'm like, what is your intention? Why are you here? Did someone send you? Are you someone else's spirit? Like, did they send you here? I
Right.
fucking hate that shit. But when it happens, it's annoying. So try to be very discerning when things do come up. But it is something that's been really important in my life. I am a chronically ill person, which I don't like saying that because I feel like I'm, putting myself into this space of saying like, oh, my life is going to constantly have these problems. But it's also one of those things that is really hard to communicate otherwise. So like there's oftentimes days or events or activities that will have an extra energetic consequence on me that a lot of the other people I know like don't have the same experience with. And plants have just been a huge support for that, because there's been a lot of like grief and anger and frustration, and having to realize that my life is just a little bit different than some other people's. And also like the way I can work to heal myself or have a better relationship with my body has largely been like with the aid of plants specifically. Rose has been huge energetically, and also for some reason, a lot of my spiritual company also really like roses, and so we're just a rose house here. We love roses, but also like internally, like I love nettle also spiritually, working with it with magic and protective magic, and also just it's great for a lot of like its relationship with my biophysiology. I think I just made up a word. What is it called? My just biological self it interacts with the plant of nettle really well. And I often like wonder like how telling our body's literal reactions to things are to, I wonder sometimes like our spiritual relationships with something. Like I have like, even the more I've delved into my craft and the more I've accepted that like who I am is a witch, the more like my physical body has changed. Same with my relationship with spirits. Like I have noticed so much more of like having less tolerability for like everyday poisons that a lot of people will use. I have like an increased reaction with them. I'm not trying to like make like a medical for sure any correlation here, but it's something that I've noticed a lot, and other people who I know have a similar thing going on, and it's very weird. But I often wonder, like, is having an enhanced relationship with your environment, does it make you that much more sensitive to like disharmony,
That's so interesting. I've never considered how a biophysical, I'm using your word now that you created, like a biophysical reaction to a plant or something like that could also like reveal something on like the spiritual level. I never considered that. That's very interesting.
I think the word I was looking for was biochemistry, but I still could be wrong.
That sounds like a real word. I mean, honestly, I believed you the first time.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, the first word sounded real, so I believe the first time. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really interesting, that's food for thought. I never really thought about it that way, because I do feel differently when I'm working with different things. physically. Like my physical body actually reacts differently. Like for example, like what I was gonna actually mention was one of my favorite allies that I work with is the spirit of my altar, because the spirit of my altar is extremely forgiving, because I disrespect my altar all the time. My poor altar. It's currently very disrespected, and I need to do some work at it. But I do feel something very different when I sit there. And I think it's just like from the work that I've done at my altar. I've just kind of cultivated this kind of energy around it where I just kind of automatically feel different. I feel warmer. I always feel something on my shoulders. It feels like someone is standing behind me with their hands on my shoulders. If that makes sense. Like it doesn't feel like someone's grabbing me. It just feels like someone's resting their hands, or maybe someone's sitting on my shoulder. I don't know. It's I don't know what it is.
They want to be tall too. They heard you were
tall. That's right. But yeah, it's like there is a certain kind of physiological kind of change that happens when I do work with, like there's a thorny love feeling, or like this gentle thorny love feeling. Those aren't words. What am I trying to say?
You're trying to describe Rose?
Yes. It's like this prickly, like excited, like kind of like, it's kind of like just like an excited feeling when I work with Rose, because Rose is so both ways. Like I feel excited, I feel love, I feel like there's also an air of like gentleness and calmness, but there's also like an air of like excitement and kind of danger working with Rose too, you know? So it's interesting that you brought that up, because now I'm like thinking about it. Now I want to like write a whole dissertation on it, even though I don't have a reason to. But and then also at the same time, like one of my favorite allies is fire. I work with fire a lot, like a lot. Fire is one of my favorite allies, because which is weird because my sun is air, but my other placements are fire, Sagittarius and Aries. So
you a wildfire?
Like, I'm so fiery. She's on fire. So like I try to incorporate fire in almost everything I do, and I respect fire. I have a very, very just like on a physical, like the physical aspect of fire, I respect it so much, you know. And I can't tell you how serious I am about fire, and how like people should be treating fire just like on a practical sense and on like a safety sense. Like I posted something on my story that I bought a fire extinguisher, because I'm just like, I have to be like, I know the power fire has, you know. I use the power of fire very frequently, and I use it because I know how powerful it can be. I use it to cleanse, I use it to bless, I use it for like sometimes like just to consecrate something really quickly. I'll light a candle and like literally just like wave it over the flame a couple of times and then consecrate it that way, you know what I mean? Like a holy fire. And I call it a holy fire. That's just what I don't know if that's actually what you would call it, but I bless the fire itself and I just call it a holy fire because that's what it is. And then I also recognize the destructive nature of fire, you know, and how fire can at the same time just destroy something, but also at the same time in the presence of fire create something, or in the aftermath of a fire also create something. So that's why I kind of like working kind of that dichotomy of what fire represents is very powerful to me. And also because I'm air, like you can't really have fire without air, so it's like I also like that relation to each other. Yeah,
fire, I agree. I didn't even consider the elements, but I also heavily work with fire. But lately I've been working a lot with water. Funny you mentioned flower essences, Mana. I'm not too familiar with them, but there's a single bottle I bought from a local metaphysical store in San Francisco, and it's a blend of several flower essences meant to help embody the virtues and qualities of La Virgen de Guadalupe. And so I'll add a couple drops of that to my water, and then I speak to my water. So I think we talked about this with Chris on our other episode of the Psalms. but I'll pray into the water, so like using my breath and like really connecting and breathing onto the water to really just recognize its life and power. And I swear to God, it makes a difference when I drink it. Like when I do it at work, I really notice me being more patient and just like kinder with people. Not that I'm an asshole at work, but I notice a change for sure in my demeanor and the way that I kind of carry myself when I take the time to add that flower essence and speak prayers into the water. So working with the spirit of water, any element really, but water and fire for sure.
I really like what you said, both of you, about fire. Fire is oddly one of the elements I resisted the most, and then I had to realize that I'm resisting it the most because it is the one I see most like myself. And interestingly enough, I have a fire extinguisher in every room because of the same reasons of respecting fire. And I did a whole like novena working the other day, and I actually stayed home the entirety of, I can't remember if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, because I had a dream that it was going to burn down to the end and the glass was going to explode absolutely everywhere. And I literally stayed home all day. I was like, I'm here till that thing's done because I need to be here if it does that. Because
it happens.
I've
It
had
happens
dreams
a
like
lot.
that like come true before.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's my funny note.
It's funny that you say that because there, I think it was Jalen Cross that mentioned it in Invoking Witchcraft, where he puts it in a huge like stock pot. So like he doesn't put it on an altar or whatever. He puts it like which is actually a wonderful idea, because when I leave the house, nothing burns, right? I whether it's novena or something that requires to be burnt, I don't care. I say a blessing when I light it, and I say a blessing after right before I extinguish the flame, just so that I know the magic is still working, right? But there's this the people like to put it in like a big stock pot just in case it, like, the glass does kind of explode, and also it being in a stock pot, if it falls over or whatever, there's a very low risk of it actually, burning your house down. And then like putting it in the bathtub or putting it in the sink would also be a good idea. Surrounding it with some sort of like a wet towel is also a great idea. Just so people, we're talking about fire safety. Also keeping baking soda at your altar is a really wonderful idea. Just to let you guys know, if you keep baking soda at your altar, if you cast a fire in a cauldron, try to have like something that you can what do you call it? Smother the fire with. Yeah, you can smother the fire with baking soda and then put a lid over it, and it'll extinguish the fire just in case it gets too big or whatever.
I'm gonna fully admit my mistakes of how many times I've left candles burning when I've left the house, even like when there's no one else home too. Like I know I'm the last one leaving, because I'm just like, it'll be fine, and then I'm like sitting at work like, oh my god, what if I go home, my house is like just in ashes? And so I no longer do that. I learned my lesson. I didn't learn my lesson because I didn't wait for anything to explode or catch on fire. I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't a good idea. But like you were saying, Fonzie, I can't remember if my teacher taught me these words or if I crafted them, but either way, for those looking to, or who might be paranoid about extinguishing your flame because you're worried the magic might go out, my little kind of chant that I say over a flame is, although this flame is being put out in the physical, may it continue to burn in the aether. So kind of like similar to what you were saying, Fonzie, like the physical flame may be out, but it's still working and doing its job in the spiritual world.
I like that. That's similar to what I do too. Usually I don't leave anything burning either, but I was like trying it with this one novena, and it was hilarious because like the first day I didn't even mean to leave it burning, and I left and I had to drive all the way across the bay. I live in Rhode Island, so there's a body of water in the way of everything. So I was driving to a friend's house. It was like 40 minutes away, and when I almost got there, I realized I left the candle burning. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go inside and I'm gonna pull a card about the status of the flame while I'm gone. And so I picked up one of my friend's random decks, so I didn't know what the imagery was, and it was the Seven of Pentacles, which is the card for me of home, and the picture on the card was a massive fire, just like the entire.
You sent it to me.
I did.
You said I'll show it to you. That's the fucking card.
Oh, absolutely not. The way I would have went straight home.
Yeah, I got in and I told my friend, and she was like, I'm just gonna log on and put myself in a fake meeting at work. So amazing friend, she put herself in a fake meeting, got in the car with me, we drove all the way back to my apartment, put out the candle, and then went to dinner. We went out to dinner instead, and then we drove all the way back, and so it was like an extra 3-hour excursion. She just left work early because
Love
I had the
that.
fucking candle going.
Hey, but better safe than sorry.
100%. But I love how it was like, it was the tarot card, but I'm like, go home. What are you doing here?
Right.
Put it out. Put it out.
Yeah. It was like, why are you even asking me this? Go back. You should have just turned around.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, that also goes into just the fact that, I mean, fire, we know what fire does. Fire is dangerous, but at the same time, the way you respect fire physically is the way I respect fire spiritually, and that's how I view everything, not just the spirit of fire, because water can also be extremely destructive. Water can kill. Water can kill you. Air can be extremely destructive. You're talking about a hurricane or a tornado. See, I live in LA. I don't know these things. Earth is also extremely destructive. We want to talk about magma and lava and earthquakes, right? So all of these elements are both very, very destructive and also create. They're also responsible for creation. So all of these things, and also going into like plant allies, these things are also extremely dangerous. Respect them the same way you would respect something that would burn down your house.
Absolutely.
And also spirits the same thing, like the saints that you work with, treat them like they're gonna burn your house down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, spirits is an interesting one because like something I've noticed is when there's been points in my life where I've gotten like particularly low, I've kind of been wrestling the depression dragon for like most of my adult life, and when I was younger too. For me, I don't know if anyone's read like The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, but it's like you always have this bell jar above your head, and they're just at different points. It's down around you, kind of separating you from reality, moving up and down, but it's always there. And the times in my life when it's kind of descended down and I've really ended up in that place of like feeling pretty hopeless or not really seeing like my day-to-day life motivation anymore, that's when some weird spirits come sniffing around sometimes. Like I have my ones that I have a trusted relationship with, but I've also noticed everyone wants to make a deal when you're sad. And that's something that I've actually like never read warnings about, but I've noticed myself that things want to make a deal with me. And I'm not talking like the devil, but I mean just like spirits, like, hey, I can help you out. Like, why don't we could do this. Like, you can, I'm also, someone who doesn't drink. And so literal spirits, in my head also sometimes at that time too. And that's, I think, another part of animism is not every, like you said, relationship is going to be constructive to you. With those consciousnesses still around, it's discernment, word of the century. So
that is so interesting because you're so right. Like you're so 100% right. You consider the fact that, I mean, there are toxic people everywhere, and the people who are the most toxic are the ones who will feed on your vulnerability. So when you're in that vulnerable state, they'll be like, oh, this is my chance. This is my chance to shine. This is my chance to manipulate this person to do the things that I need them to do, So like what Mana said, discernment is the term of the century. Let your discernment enter the chat every once in a while, because maybe there are things that are a little bit more nefarious that don't have your best interest at heart. They have their best interest in heart, and they're not interested in helping you in any way. They kind of are more interested in making sure that they do their bidding.
And they're often relational too. Like there's definitely some spirits that have come to me, and I've done lots of divination work to figure out what's going on, and it's like for some reason they don't have the ill will towards me for the reason that they're there, but they will be a little bit more volatile, like generally. And it's like, okay, I have to tread this relationship carefully, or vice versa. Like something that's really good for a lot of people will be really damaging for me that I've learned, or the relationship is not good. And that's the same way, with literal physical folks around, there's can be people that do great work in the community for other people and not you, and that exists. And that's the same thing for, even food. Like people who have food allergies. Like one food is really nutritious for one person, and for someone else it will kill them.
Right.
So it transcends like so many different things.
Ryan, do you have anything to add?
No, not on. Excuse me. No.
I guess not.
No, not on that topic. Y'all covered that beautifully.
That was. I love that. I mean, I love the idea of just paying attention to what they're saying and how they make you feel, because also pay attention to how you feel when they're saying it, right? So they're saying these things to make you feel good, or they're trying to connect with you because they're trying to make you feel good. Why are they trying to make you feel good? Because you feel awful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe that's not a really good time for you to start, trafficking with spirits, because you're not in a, you're not grounded, you're not in a clear state of mind. So just be more careful, just in general. I think we should just be careful. Just in general, because what we do is not necessarily as safe. There's a safe way of doing everything, but it's not necessarily witchcraft is dangerous. Any sort of magical practice is dangerous. Just tread lightly and make sure you know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And like with that too, witchcraft being dangerous and that discernment, I think you do have to crash and burn. It's part of that, like trusting your judgment and having to learn what is true for you as well, while still trying to be safe. It's a funny balance of like taking that risk and trusting how you feel in a situation, and understanding that you're going to have consequences as a neutral term, good or bad, whichever way it flows.
Do any of you have like any excuse me, do any of you have any like advice to folks who maybe would start, kind of trafficking with spirits and kind of contacting spirits, or communing with spirits? I know that we've spoke in length with working with saints, and a spiritual court in that sense. I mean, which is, I think, the same but also different. But like in a physical realm, like in a more like a witchcraft kind of aspect, like working with like plant allies and working with the elements like fire. Like, what are some things that you folks do or did to form relationships with these things that we always grew up thinking were just things and not, held any sort of consciousness? Like, how do you start kind of shifting that idea in your head? Like, how do you initiate that?
For me, it's a lot of prayer work. Like anytime I'm incorporating herbs into a working, like especially in the beginning of my craft, I didn't do this. I kind of was just the type of person who'd be like, oh, this spell calls for this, and like throws it together and expects it to work. But now it's like I pray, and not that I put the life into something, because everything, like we said, already has life, but kind of like waking the spirit of whatever it is up. So like putting some lavender in my mortar and pestle before I grind it up into a powder to add to a candle. I'll place my hands over it, just be like, oh, like I pray that the spirit of lavender gives me permission to work with so-and-so, and like I'll breathe onto it, because I'm also using my breath as an offering, but also again working with like the Holy Spirit to kind of be like, hey, spirit of lavender, like I'm here and want to work with you. So for me, it's like through prayer is how I connect with pretty much everything. Like I pray a lot, and that's probably the most magical thing I do on a daily basis is prayer. So that's how I usually connect with spirits, even if I have nothing to offer. Like if I'm going for a walk in nature and I find like a bush I really like with some really beautiful fruits or flowers, like I may not have water to give it, but I'll pray over it. I'll just offer it. Like I think again we talked about this, I think, with Chris in the Psalms episode, but like I'll pray Psalm 23 over or to it as an offering. So again, that breath of life coming from me, but also just the vocalization or mental vocalization of a prayer as an offering to something to build a relationship with that spirit. Because I feel like often people fall into the material need to want to give something as an offering to a spirit, which is totally fine and dandy, but we have to remember sometimes we don't have anything physical to give. So prayer for me is always that a go-to, because I always have my voice. I always have that ability to offer that prayer to something or someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like what you said about prayer, and also kind of activating and like what it is you're trying to access or build a relationship within a plant. Because oftentimes in that example, because lavender, people will say it has so many different qualities to it. And when you pray, when you speak to it, when you let it know like what it is you are looking to do or seeking, it targets something more specifically, and recognizing something within whatever it is you're talking to, that you're going to have a more powerful response than if you were just like left to be generalized, I think, in my experience, and in that way with plants. And with spirits in general, or the spirit of something, I find that the most important way to connect with it is not always to like ask for something right away.
Yes.
Like I've found if I'm building a relationship with whether it's like a new ally, or just when I didn't really know anyone in my spirit court, but I knew that they were there, I would just leave like pieces of a drink. Like I have a tiny little shot glass for one of my kind of like main people that I work with a lot, and whenever I have rose kombucha, I always pour some of it in there for them too, just to like show them that I care in that way for myself. And also like last time I spoke with you both on a podcast, which was mine, I shared a story about connecting with Saint Raphael, the Archangel, and them really coming through for me. And following that, I ended up just, I couldn't find a Raphael candle at the Botanica, but I ended up just making one out of a white novena, and then just leaving bread and water out for Saint Raphael as like a thank you, and not asking anything for them. Sometimes it's just about like nurturing a relationship in that way, or connecting, or just letting someone know that you're there, thinking of them just like you would another person. Again, it's like, how would you it's not always the same. Metaphors are never going to be fully precise. Like no spirit is like exactly like a human being in that way, but it's a good, I think, grounding point. Like if you find yourself abstracting too far away from what it is you're trying to build with someone, ultimately think like, if I met someone really cool, how would I build that relationship? Because most people, they meet someone cool, they're not trying to like use them for like a specific need and like throw them away. Hopefully, I mean, that happens a lot, unfortunately, but like if you're trying to build a legit relationship, that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to get to know them and learn about them and see what you have from each other to enhance each other's lives. And I find too, like, I don't do saint work specifically, but when I'm talking to spirits in my life, there's things that I do that aid them as well. Like there's reasons that we work well as a team together. Like there's something that I can do or I have that maybe they don't, or they need help with, and so it's a mutual exchange. I often struggle with my first real understanding of like a spirit guide and everything like that was a lot from like meme internet, because again, I was reading a lot, but I didn't like look into the spiritual community online until like recently, and that was a hard thing for me to like wrap my head around. The more I learned like how entitled sometimes people talk about spirits in their lives. And I think there's absolutely spirits that are willing to like help you unconditionally in certain ways, but it's a weird expectation to have.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%. If there was any advice I would ever give anybody in regards to like working with spirits or cultivating a relationship with spirits, I would first tell them, it's like, first of all, you have to cultivate a relationship with yourself to the point to where you trust your intuition, and that those things aren't like, is this in my head? Am I just imagining these things? Are these messages really messages, or am I just making it up? So once you start like kind of developing that thing, that little voice in your head saying that this is real, then you can start kind of discerning whether these messages are actually messages or things that are it's kind of like a feeling that you have in your gut. I can't explain it. It's just something that you experience, right? And also offering time is like like what you said, before you shouldn't start asking for shit just because you expect it to happen, just because everyone is telling you, is like, oh, because I work with St. Anthony and Anthony just gives me everything I asked for because I asked for it. It's like, no, before that even happened, you had to cultivate some sort of relationship with Anthony, because this is not transactional, it's a relationship, you know? So offering your time, spending time with these things, you know, so it's just sitting and spending time with, like there was this, I think it was on Invoking Witchcraft, where Britain mentioned a friend of theirs that had like a pet flame. Do you guys remember that?
I don't know if I listened to that one.
A friend of Britain, I think it was Britain, had a pet flame where they had this like candle or this flame burning, and when like the candle would be almost spent, they would transfer that same flame to another candle, and they just kind of like cared for that flame, like just kind of spending time with that flame.
Oh,
and,
I love that.
feeding that flame, and kind of, yeah, it was really sweet. It was like a really, really sweet kind of idea, and that's kind of the idea I want to kind of come across, is like spending time and taking care of that spirit cultivates a relationship. And it's the same thing like what Mana mentioned, where how do you cultivate a relationship with a person? Like my love language is quality time, you know, just being able to just sit with someone and just be with each other and like spend that time. Like actually, like I think the term spend time has kind of lost its meaning, because when you think of like the term spending time, it's you're spending time, and time is not something that you can ever get back. Like it's spent, you know, it's gone. So, you know, spending time with anything, spending time with a spirit, spending time with a person is an incredibly powerful offering. So like my first rosary that I ever bought, that thing was attached to me. I spent all the time I could possibly spend time with that rosary. I kept it in my pocket. I kept it under my pillow. It was attached to me for weeks. And then I was just cultivating this relationship, and it's one of the most powerful, amulets that I carry with me. And then, you know, like my first tarot deck, I spent time with just it. I wasn't dealing it. I wasn't pulling cards. I was just like, I had it in my hand. I was playing with it. I was shuffling with it. Like I was spending time with it, so that the spirit could get to know me and I can get to know it. And my tarot card, my tarot is, she is, for some reason I feel like it's a she. And she's a bitch sometimes. Oh, she's a bitch. She can be really feisty. Oh man. Especially because I've been using her a lot. I've been using her a lot lately, especially because I've been working with a lot of more clients lately. Oh, she slapped a bunch of my clients across the face for sure. I made a lot of people cry. I made a lot of people cry. It's like, oh my god.
Success.
I didn't know I had to yeah, it worked. Woohoo. Yeah. It was also really validating. I was like, oh wow, I'm actually a good reader. And then also at the same time, it's like when you're actually cultivating, you're spending time with these patients. Oh my god, I'm still at work. When you're spending time with these spirits, before you start actually asking for things, like see what consent feels like. Like before you start asking for, you know, granting your will, or you know, what is the spirit's consent feels like? Because we spoke about this before. It's like, okay, so rosemary has its associations. Rosemary deals with protection, but what is rosemary consenting to in relation to its relationship with you? What does it want to do for you? What does Rose want to do for you? So recognize what consent feels like from that spirit, and then you're going to be able to kind of, it becomes muscle memory. It starts to become very easy for you to recognize what a relationship with your spirit feels like. And the relationship that I have with my aspect of Mary is definitely different from the relationship that Ryan has with their aspect of Mary. You know, it feels different. It definitely feels different. So it's not like a blanket, you know, it doesn't cover all, you know, the same thing. So trusting what you feel and trusting that it's real is like number one. And that's like, I think, the hardest part, because once you get past that, it's just like, oh, this is a piece of cake, you know.
Totally. I want to say also, excuse me. I want to say also, since we're putting spirits in the perspective of relationships, because it is relationships that we form with spirits, just like any relationship with the person in our lives, boundaries is also really important, which is something I've learned.
Yes.
And my example is that there's like a spirit in my house. I don't know. It's not the house spirit. I think it's just the spirit of. Wait, no, sorry. Rewind. It's not the house, the spirit of the house, but it's like a house. I'm pretty sure it's a house spirit because it feels older. My friends and I have done divination to try to communicate with it, but she's just so curious, right? And like, I'm not scared of her. I just fucking hate jump scares. Like, I hate when shit pops out the corner of my eye. Like, that'll make me scream like a little bitch. And so she likes to like pop up sometimes. Like, not like I don't see full blown apparitions. Like, the most I've seen is kind of like a cloudy gray mass. And the way I have my mirror in my bedroom, I'm just like checking myself out, just looking and feeling cute, but like it faces my doorway. And so sometimes I'd be like just feeling myself in the mirror and then see like this like cloudy gray mass in my doorway, and like I fucking like scream, and I'm like, girl, like I know you want to get to know me, but like not my bedroom, like not my, like leave me alone. And
it's just like Austin standing there, like, do you want some of this granola bar?
No, so the thing with the boundary is like I adamantly kept telling her several times, I'm like, yo, like you gotta stop jump scaring me, like this isn't cool, I don't appreciate it, you're probably laughing, I don't find it funny. And so I just refreshed her altar, gave her new altar water, and I was like, okay, maybe this will cool her down. No, that was like crack cocaine for her, because then she just like bounced off the walls and started like being even more, she started turning electronic shit in the house, and I'm like, girl, we don't own the PG&E, you are not turning on my lights. And so the boundary I set was I threw her altar water in the sink. I'm like, you're not getting water from me again until you learn how to like calm down. And she hasn't bothered me since. But then she's been bothering my other roommate, and she really takes a liking to him. So I told him the same thing. I'm like, you got to give her water and then like punish her and throw it away, because like that's the only thing that kept her from bothering me. So that's just one example of like building a relationship with spirits, but also they're like people. Sometimes you have to like set a firm boundary, otherwise they're gonna be like, oh, I can fuck with you whenever I want.
Yeah, they have personalities, and sometimes you have to navigate those personalities. You know what I mean? So, like, it's the same thing when dealing with some like. Imagine if that was your spirit was a friend of yours. You're like, can you fucking stop? Like, listen, I poured you a glass of water because you said you were thirsty. I'm about to pour it down the drain. Okay, so can we not?
That's so funny.
Literally that.
Oh my god! 7 years ago, I was borrowing a record/CD player from somebody, and I had it in my bedroom, and like I've never like owned my own record player, but like I was just borrowing it for a little while because I found some old records. And because it had like the CD player in it, I put like one of the CDs that I had, which was I'm Wide Awake It's Morning album by Bright Eyes, in there. And the first track on that album is just Conor Oberst talking. And the first thing that he says is, so there's this woman. And then he just starts describing this person on an airplane. And for most of the time that I had this in this room with me, I would turn off the lights and then go to lay down in the bed. And then a few minutes later, the record player would turn on and just start playing that song, like on the first track, to the point where I had to be like, I have no idea who this woman is that's trying to communicate with me through, but it has to stop. And so I did have to set like a boundary with that, and I ended up moving the record player out of the room. That entire house was like so active. There was times where like I would swear that people were talking in the other room, and so I'd open the door expecting to be like, can you not have a conversation at like 1 a.m. in front of my doorway? And there would be nobody in the hallway. Everything would be quiet. The TV was off. It was like, it would freak me out so much. But yeah, boundaries with house spirits, absolutely possible. Recommend it.
Cultivating relationship with spirits includes building boundaries and forming boundaries with them. That's part of cultivating any sort of relationship with any sort of spirit, and also any sort of person, honestly. And then when you realize that these spirits aren't respecting your boundaries, then that's a toxic spirit. Get the fuck out of your house. You gotta do some sort of banishing ritual to get rid of them, because they're not there to help you. They're there to, the very least, annoy you, and that's just not cute.
Right. It goes from Holy Spirit activate to Holy Spirit deactivate.
Right. Holy Spirit banish. Get the fuck out of here.
With the dance. I like the dance.
Holy Spirit deactivate. Get the fuck out.
She did the clapping thing with her little pony.
I ain't get no sleep because of y'all. He ain't get no sleep because of me.
My friend Echo made incense when I moved somewhere, and it's called "Get the Fuck Out" incense for house blessing.
Love that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's awesome. I need I need some of that sometimes. But anyways, anything else on animism you guys want to discuss?
I can't think of anything else right now, but I have a secret to tell you all. Everyone
Ooh,
listening.
spill.
I would love to
I'm
hear.
just curious. I feel like you might not have any thoughts on this, but I'm just curious. I power through this, but I cannot stand the smell of Florida water, and I feel like that probably says more about me than anything
What?
else.
Oh, I just took like personal offense to that. I'm sorry. I gotta go. I think my house spirit wants to hang out. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I've been really thinking about that. I don't know why recently so much. It's because I have it in a spray bottle, like diluted too with some consecrated water, because I can't do the whole thing. And I'm like, why am I offended by this? Is there something up with me? Why is this working on me when I'm trying to use it for other things?
Am I the bad
I don't
energy?
know. It's weird.
Yeah, is Mana the villain? I don't know. I can't relate. I really can't relate because I love Florida water. It's like one of my favorite things on my altar. It's one of the things I reach for all the time. You know what I mean? And when in doubt, I reach for the holy water and the Florida water.
I use it every single day. Like my teacher taught me how to do a spiritual pass where you just put them in your hands and like kind of do a sweep over your aura, like first thing in the morning, first thing anytime you come back to your house, like after being out and about, to just like, sweep off all the energy that isn't needed. I do it with Florida water. But I tried Kananga water. I like that too. It's a little bit more citrusy, orangey. Is it like the scent of Florida water in particular? Is it just too alcohol-y, or is it just like the perfume that's in it?
I mean, it doesn't have a gentle scent, so that's maybe.
No. I'm personally someone if I think about scents in general, I'm pretty sensitive about things, so that might be part of it because it's pretty strong. But I also gravitate more towards like earthy scents and flavors too. Like even with teas, I'll drink dirt tea any day. I have a hard time with like really intense, bright, florally teas, and the Florida water is very, very florally.
Okay.
But it's not even. I'll spray other things, and like I love rose hydrosol for like a similar reason. I love my incenses. I'm an incense person, but even when I spray it and it's diluted, it's like I can't get it out of the inside of my nose. Like I'll spray it like one time, like for a reason. I'll be wiping something down, and then it's like I can't stop smelling it. And I'm like, why am I being haunted by this? So maybe someone who's listening will have a potential reason for this, but if I consider, maybe I don't know, maybe the spirit of all the Florida waters I've ever bought are just like
I think. I don't know. Mana having an aversion to Florida water makes me nervous.
Remains to be seen.
I know.
It would make sense for my interpretation of my own life, but for other people, I don't know. I have to ask them what they think of me.
Okay, so leave it in the comments, y'all. So
one of my friends, I love lavender. I love the smell of lavender. I like lavender in foods, but one of my friends, they absolutely hate the smell of lavender. Like, it looks pretty, but don't ever put that shit near me because it smells disgusting. And it just astounds me. I feel like I rarely meet anyone who doesn't like the scent of lavender. So it just brings me back to thinking about how you were saying, Mana, like the biochemical and like spiritual reactions to certain things, if that indicates any type of relationship with the spirit of that item. Like they're not a super they're not a spiritual practitioner by any means, but that just makes me curious to think like maybe them and the spirit of lavender just don't go well together.
Well, I mean, I also have an aversion to anise. And anise,
really?
Yeah, I hate it. I hate the taste. I hate the smell. It tastes like licorice. Nope, I hate it.
I don't like licorice.
I'm a red vine girl. I don't like Twizzlers. Or is it the other way around?
Red vine.
I don't eat licorice that often, so I can't remember actually.
Red vine is like my favorite candy, but I'm talking about like black licorice.
Oh, yeah, that's nasty.
It's yucky.
That's what I'm talking about too.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
No, black licorice is the devil's food.
that's what anise to me tastes like. It's awful. But the thing about it is like I use anise in like my prosperity spells. So I'm just like, God damn it. So I burn it. I put anise in my holy fires when I'm doing a prosperity spell. So I don't know. Maybe that's why. Talking about is like, oh, money doesn't come to me. It does. I'm fine, but I just don't like it. I don't like it as much. But people use anise for other things too. So, but is that the only thing I have an aversion to? I usually like everything else. I don't like the taste of like chamomile, like the whole flower. Like I don't like that. But like if it's in like a tea and it's like I don't know.
So you were saying you don't like whole chamomile flowers, like the flavor of it?
Yeah, like if if I make a tea, like a loose tea and I like I get a chamomile flower in my mouth in the tea, I don't like the taste of that. I don't really have.
Well, I don't know if anyone likes the taste of like a soggy flower in there, like the whole thing, like.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe that isn't just me. A whole mouth of flour doesn't sound nice.
No. Yeah, I like leaves and roots and those types of teas a lot, and like spices and things like that.
Do you like mugwort tea?
Why did you just read my mind?
Mugwort's
I was
good.
just about to bring up mugwort tea.
Because I hate mugwort tea.
Oh, I don't drink like just straight. I drink gay mugwort. No, I'm kidding. I have to mix mugwort with other herbs to be able to imbibe it. Yeah, because I don't like straight mugwort. No. I have to mix it with like I have like a dream. I have like a dream blend of like lemon balm, chamomile, lavender, and mugwort. Because just mugwort by itself that's too earthy for me.
Lemon balm makes everything taste better. That's a good choice.
But do you like mugwort tea?
Not just by itself, like with other stuff.
No, Mana. I'm talking about Mana. Shut the fuck up, Ryan.
You know, I don't drink it that often, but I used to. I tend to have like not necessarily vivid dreams all of the time, but I have really mundane dreams constantly that I confuse with reality, like pretty often. And so I don't really seek out a lot of like dream enhancement stuff because they kind of just they roll out anyway.
Oh, Fonzie, I think your mic's off again.
It's because I was muted because I'm an idiot. I was just saying, good for you because I need a lot of work when it comes. I don't fucking dream. Dreaming is hard for me, man.
I have to train myself in and out of it. It's weird, like how much, like making, like I swear, I have a really cheesy book about dreams that I don't necessarily recommend, but I did read it a while ago by Sylvia Browne. It's like an old like one of those mass market paperback copies from like the early 2000s, and there's something she says in there about how like once you put your awareness around like wanting to dream more and reading about dreams, like you oftentimes will start to dream, and then if you try to write them down as minimal detail as possible, like, or not minimal, but like even if there's nothing really there that you remember, if you do remember something, you do remember one image, just start to write it down and it will start to follow more. And for me, in my experience, and this is my experience, but that's proven to be like really true. So there'll be times when I'm writing things down or just doing a voice memo, and even like that active recall will kind of signal to my brain that dreams are important in some way right now. So it's never consistent fully, like, but it'll come in phases where I'll have a lot and they'll kind of build up to like a really long, significant dream. And then I'll have really horrible sleeping habits and not remember anything for like a month and a half.
Yeah, I love dreams. Dreams is how I usually get in touch, usually mostly unintentionally, with like the spirit world. Like I've had the last few months is the first time I've had dreams where spirits have like shown me certain workings to do. Like when I was having issues with that house spirit at first, I remember having a dream where all I remember is I had a green candle and I lit it and I said the Lord's Prayer over it and I put it by my door. And then I woke up. I never did it because, I'm stubborn and I don't write shit down. But I just remember like having that dream. And then I have like a lot of prophetic dreams. Like, I guess that's like one, like, I guess, quote unquote gift I have. Like, I've had a lot of dreams that end up like happening at a later time. And that always trips me out. But same thing, man. Like, sometimes I'll go periods like not like I feel like I dream and then just don't remember it the moment I wake up. Like, I feel like I always dream. But then I'll go through periods where I'm just constantly having, like, these last few weeks or these last few days, I've been having vivid dreams like constantly, and it kind of gets irritating because I'm like, could something normal happen? Like, why am I standing on a skyscraper in the middle of the ocean? I don't understand.
Well, I'm kind of jealous, but I mean, I try really hard, but dreams are hard for me. It's only like when I think there's a reason why I only remember my nightmares. Like that is like when I like there's the last dream I remember happened to me years ago, where I was going through some stuff with my dad, and I had this really awful dream where like, and they always they're always in the same place. They always like start in like this like school kind of setting. It's like an older school. It looks like Harvard or something. And it's like falling apart. Like there's no roof, and all the walls are falling apart. It's like it feels like that, and there's like a cloudy sky over me. It always starts in this setting. And in this dream, it was just like me, like in different situations, running from my dad who was trying to kill me.
Wow.
Like that was like the last dream I remembered. And I had a really awful, really bad relationship with my dad at the time. So I was just like, I think it was time for me to kind of like, make that relationship better, work on making that relationship better. So I did. And then it's still like it's still kind of like I carry it with me, that dream. And then also dreams that I actually do remember, the dreams that I have during the day, like when I nap.
Oh yeah.
I remember those dreams all the time, but they don't, like, they're all like weird. Like, they don't mean anything. Like I'm in the like it's strange because like I'm literally like, there was one time where I was laying on like a concrete ground, like an asphalt which looked like a parking lot, but the parking lot was totally empty, and I was just laying there, and then I woke up. Like, what the hell is that? Like, what?
Wow.
What am I supposed to do with that?
Right.
It was
That
strange.
sounds like you teleported on accident. And you're like, where the fuck am I?
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. Or I was just like, and it felt like I was actually there. It was strange, but it's weird because my dreams are never me. Like, it's never from my perspective. Like, I'm not the one laying on. I'm watching myself. Like it's like a camera or something. Like I'm like filming myself. I'm like looking. It's fucking. I don't know. It's weird up here, you guys. It's weird. My brain is weird. But
Are they in color usually, or is it like black and white?
they're in color, but it's really saturated. Like it's really like orangey and yellow. Yeah.
As you said that, your room got that same color you were saying.
Yeah, we'll see.
There
Manifest.
it goes.
Ooh, she's a witch. But yeah.
I didn't know. Wow.
Well, see, I told you guys, I actually do this. But yeah. I think that's a great way for us to kind of bookmark to kind of cap this. That was a really awesome conversation on animism, and I'm so happy that you were here to kind of expand on how you view it.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I do love to talk. I'm always just get a little nervous when I'm on someone else's podcast because I'm so used to running the show and I'm a control freak. So it's like, it's hard. It's like, I'm so used to like, it's interesting. You know, like a point will come to a close and my brain is like, well, how do I move to the next point? And I'm like, it's actually not my job right now to do that for once. So that was fun.
No,
Thank
it
you.
was very natural. You did very, very well. I this was a very good conversation. It was very comfortable, and you seemed very at ease. And we had a very nice conversation. It felt like I was having coffee with a friend.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Mana, and thank you for all the perspectives and wisdom and information you shared.
Mana, do you mind just telling folks where to find you on the interwebs?
Oh yeah, so my main place is going to be my website, which is mothmana.com. There you'll find a gallery of my digital art. You'll also have information on readings and then links to social media. So I have Instagram, which is @mothmanatarot, and Twitter, which is @Mana Aelin. And my podcast, The Real Witches of the End Times, is also linked on my website, but it's also on most, regular podcast platforms out there. And if you haven't heard the episode with Fonzie and Ryan on my show, you definitely should, because it's a prelude to this and it's good context for the internet rupture that occurred afterwards. So to know what happened.
Oh man. Oh, God, that rupture. When you talk about that rupture, yikes. There was definitely something you should have seen. Okay, Ryan, you can edit this out if you feel like you should. But I remember when that happened, when the whole he who shall not be named happened. I really, really wanted to send it to Ryan, but Ryan was in Portland. He was on vacation, and I was like, I can't ruin his vacation. I can't ruin his vacation. So I had to wait for them to come back. I was like, okay, Ryan, you're back, right? You're home. I need to tell you something. So I FaceTimed them and we watched it together. And the queer rage that came from Ryan was just like, oh my God.
I remember when Ryan was live tweeting watching it, and I didn't know that you were both watching it together, and that's what was happening. And I was like, wait, like, why didn't Ryan know this was happening already? Because I told Fonzie, and then you just kept like going down, and I was like, something is going on. And then it would be quiet for a little while, and then you were like, actually, I'm still really pissed off about this, and you had a reason to be. So I remember that puts context together for me now.
Yeah, you were rage tweeting. I totally forgot about that, and I didn't realize that you were tweeting like literally while we were, let's just say, disagreement at one time for like a week and a half, and the people just didn't stop talking about it. It just like kept going and going and going, and I was like, wow. Are we stirring the pot? I love this. Yeah, exactly.
And it's wild. Is like on the episode, I don't even think I mean, at the time I was like, I don't even think we touched anything particularly controversial. I mean, the most controversial thing was like, Jesus is a witch, but you're like, well, we're not doing that discussion. Right. And then that wasn't even, no one cared about that comment. It was just the fact that people were legitimately talking about their experiences. And you both clarified multiple times that you're not like telling people that they should have the same relationship either. It's just like, this is what worked for us. We're here for the people who are trying to heal from that. And that's that. And like, you both literally said that multiple times. And then it was just taken out of context. But also, again, to end on like a positive note, so many people also like came out of the woodwork to say that they had that trauma and this was helpful, and that they've been working on this relationship too. People who I have never really seen talk about that type of thing, or I didn't know they had that relationship or history, were talking about it online also, which was cool to see that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad we had that. I'm glad that, like I said, I'm glad people are having the conversation, and I'm glad that we're part of that conversation, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Red Text Podcast, and another thanks to our wonderful, wonderful guest, Mana.
Bye. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I thought you were doing an exit without me.
We are.
I was like, okay.
No, we are. We are.
I thought you were going to take it, Fonzie.
I swear.
Oh my God. Oh, my heart is fluttering. That was so awkward.
No, we usually bounce off. I'm sorry.
I think I died.
I think I'm gonna pass away. Oh my God, that was like this thing that Mana did. That was.
It's like, do not know what's happening. Surrender. I still don't even know what was supposed to happen.
You know, let's redo that. Let's redo that.
Oh my God, my stomach hurts. I can't handle it. Hang on. Oh. Hang on. I'm literally, I think I'm going to pass away. That was so fucking funny. This one. That was hilarious. That was so funny. Okay, let's do it again.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll take it. I'll take it from you again. I'll take it from you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to take it.
That's okay. I just feel like that's what we usually do, but it's okay. Take two. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Red Text Podcast. Another huge thanks to our guest, Mana.
My name is Fonzie. I am Witch Illumicente on Instagram and Twitter.
And you can find me, Ryan, the Mestizo Mystic, on Instagram or on Twitter at Mestizo Mystic.
And we will see you guys next time on our next Holy Communion.